Hey guys, this is Matt Core from ControlPaint.com. And first off, I just want to thank you for supporting the site with your purchase. It really does make a difference. So this series is going to use a variety of tools, but really the goal is a simple one. We're going to retain edge control, but we're going to declutter the layer stack. We're going to work on a very short, lean and clean layer stack. Because listen, if I could paint on one or two layers all the time, I totally would. That just gives a feeling of fluidity. It allows me to work almost like I would with natural media. Now, you might say working in this way is great, except if you want control. Like for instance, in this complicated image, I might want to brighten all the windows at the same time. And the obvious way to isolate the windows is to use layers. Well, if I work that way, then I might have to have separate layers for all the other elements in my composition, and then when I start working, it just gets complicated. All of a sudden, I'm not thinking about it in terms of a painting. It's more of a puzzle, and I have to consider which layer's on top and which one's in the middle. It gets confusing. So over the years, working in game studios, I've had to come up with unorthodox solutions to just meet deadlines. And one of them that I've come across is using some alternative ways to isolate these selections. So in this series, we're going to be using three often overlooked tools. We're going to use paths, we're going to use alpha channels, and the blend if feature. Now, even though these don't initially seem like tools that were really designed for digital painters, they are surprisingly effective at keeping your documents simple. Now, before we get into the details, I want to go through some examples of these techniques in action. The most basic is painting in a specific region of my image. So here I'm just painting in the river, and I'm doing so without losing that carefully created edge. I'm painting reflections on a couple different layers, and I never have to worry about painting outside the lines. Here I'm painting textured highlights on the walls, but you'll notice the brush strokes are automatically avoiding the shadowed areas. This allows me to use dynamic brush strokes, but it's only becoming visible on top of the bright areas of my canvas, and I did not make any specific selections ahead of time. And in this example, I'm modifying based on the depth of my image, because these overlapping forms recede into space, and here I can just turn a simple paint bucket fill into a layer of fog, and you can see that the fog is thickest in the background and gets thinner and thinner as it comes towards the viewer. And then I can use that same exact selection to act like depth of field on a camera. So you can see this Gaussian blur is most blurred in the background, and then gets less and less blurred as it comes towards the foreground. These are just a few examples, and the list really goes on and on. But it goes to show that you can paint loose and flat and keep a lean layer stack, but still have that tight edge control when you want it. In the following videos, I'll show you how all of these techniques work, but our main two tools are going to be paths and alpha channels. So let's just start by learning to spot the differences between the two. This is a soft selection, so this would be a perfect example of an alpha channel. This is a very pristine hard edge shape. This is a good example for a path. This selection has both hard and soft edges. Well, if you see any soft edges, it cannot be a path. Paths are only hard edges. This one here looks photographic. Once again, this is something only achievable through an alpha channel. This one has transparency, as in it is not either on or off. There is grayscale in the middle. This might be useful for something where you're showing depth or translucency, and these kind of selections are absolutely alpha channels. You cannot make this with a path. This one is both hard-edged and has repeated shapes, and for some reasons we'll get into later, this is an excellent candidate for paths, so you definitely make this one with the pen tool. Now, if you're worried that this all seems very abstract, I am absolutely going to explain how this works into your process. What this is all getting at is teaching you to look at your painting and to identify an area that you want to paint in and immediately know what kind of tool will help you define that area. So if, for instance, you wanted to paint something in the sky, well, look at the painting. That looks like a pretty hard edge. That sounds like a path to me. So to kick things off, let's start by getting comfortable with making paths.